Part 100. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chen San. Chapter 1031. December 1st, 859 of the New Era. Kaylan silently recited the date, looked around again, and inspected the room he was in. The equipment in this room are all very old models, which fit the era background of nearly 100 years ago. At that time, the Ark was still in the interstellar drifting stage. Although Alpha Star had been discovered, the first advance team had not yet. Without reaching Alpha Star, the people on the Ark naturally could not exploit the resources on Alpha Star, etc. The first advance team. Kaylan couldn't help but think of those knowledge points in history books. In the year 840 of the New Era, Ark discovered planet Alpha. In April of the same year, Ark sent its first advance exploration team to Alpha Planet. This advance team boarded a shuttle that was backward from a modern perspective. After a long journey of 19 years, they finally arrived at Alpha Planet. In order to ensure the physical condition of the members of the advance team, most of the members of the advance team spent these 19 years in hibernation cabins. Only those who were on duty would be awakened, and their task was to monitor the shuttle, check whether there is any deviation in the course of the ship, and perform maintenance and inspection on the equipment inside the ship. Could it be that, I am now on the shuttle carrying the first Alpha Star advance team? No, that's not right. This is not real, this is a dream, Kaylan suddenly reacted. Back then, the fool was one of the members of this advance team. What he saw now should be the scene in the memory of the fool. Those memory fragments should have been buried deep in his mind, those things that Kaylan had always wanted to explore, but were shrouded in a thick fog. This time, I probably triggered certain conditions and successfully unlocked this part of the memory, and I was able to indulge in this memory. Kaylan was suddenly curious about the fool's real name, and immediately lowered his head to look at his chest. According to the tradition of the Ark civilization, the uniform chests of such public officials usually have identity information printed on them. This Alpha Star Advance Exploration Team nature is no exception. Kaylan did see the identity plate sewn on the hibernation suit. However, the words on the nameplate were blurry. This blur was not because the nameplate was contaminated or worn. No matter how hard it was wiped, it would not change. It became clear, as if the problem was Ian's eyes. People with high myopia see things without glasses, which is almost the same effect. Kaylan tried to rub the words on the nameplate with his fingertips. This is a plastic nameplate, and the words on it are all engraved with lasers. Even if you can't see clearly with your eyes, you can still feel it with your touch. But just when Ian's fingers touched the words, he found speechlessly that the touch on his fingertips disappeared, as if his tactile nerves were suddenly cut off. It seems that no method will work. Kaylan thought for a while, but had no choice but to give up. This information was probably deliberately blocked by the fool, or to put it another way, it was deliberately forgotten by him. The fool in this memory fragment only remembers that he has an identity plate on his body, but he has no memory of what is written on the plate or his real name. As the experiencer, Kaylan, naturally, it is impossible to create things out of thin air and see things that do not exist in the first place. He cast his gaze on the chests of those still lying in the hibernation cabin. The identity plates of these people were also blurred. The memory fragment is unlocked, but not completely unlocked. Kaylan muttered and pulled out of the hibernation cabin. He should have been awakened by the timing device of the hibernation cabin. As for the others, judging from the control panel of the hibernation cabin, they were all still in a normal hibernation state. December 1st, Kaylan looked at the time on the screen again. Based on this, I should be the last batch of rotators to be awakened. The shuttle will arrive soon. Alpha Planet, these people will all wake up. I just don't know how long this memory is, including the content of these people's exploration on the surface of Alpha Planet. At that time, maybe we can ask some questions from these people. Useful information comes, as long as that information is not blocked. As for now, maybe we can check the shuttle first. After all, some important information should be recorded in the computer on the ship. Once it comes, make peace with it. After confirming that this is just a memory fragment in his mind, Kaylan feels at ease. Although he can't find a way to get rid of this memory for the time being, he just wants to wait until the content of the memory fragment plays. And, the self in the real world should wake up. Kaylan walked to the door. The sensor device on the door frame made a soft beep, the red indicator light instantly jumped to green, and the metal gate slid into the wall. Identity verified, welcome back. It is now December 1st, 859, New Era, 1209. This is your fourth awakening. 4 years and 17 days have passed since the last time you entered the hibernation cabin. The previous crew on duty has entered the mission log into the central computer. Please go to the control room to check. Kingyu's female voice sounded above her head. Although the voice was very realistic, it still had a certain stiffness to it, and you could tell it was recorded in advance. After a good sound source is synthesized with AI, with the technology of Ian's era, as long as the money is available, it is almost difficult to distinguish the authenticity of artificially synthesized sounds. 100 years ago, these technologies did not make much progress compared to when the Ark had just escaped from the Earth. For the Ark civilization in the interstellar drifting period, any technology that does not promote survival is not necessary for development. Entertainment activities are also limited to the lowest level: movies, music, literary and artistic creation. There are some, but they basically serve the construction of the Ark. Is just like an era in the old era that is inconvenient to mention. Kaylan stepped through the gate. Behind the door was a straight corridor. There was a small cubicle on the right side of the corridor. The projection equipment projected a green arrow-shaped holographic image in front of the small cubicle, flashing continuously. Apparently he was gesturing to Kaylan to follow the arrow. Kaylan walked in without hesitation, not worrying about any danger lurking in the cubicle. The most dangerous thing in memory is the taboo knowledge, but Kaylan is extremely resistant to those things. Other than that, there is nothing in memory that can really hurt him. He is like it was like playing an immersive game. Even if there was an alien lurking on the shuttle, even if the alien killed him, he would not be harmed in reality. He can even use death to return to the real world. But Kaylan is not in a hurry to go back. He doesn't know how to enter the memory world. Since he has come in this time, he naturally has to collect enough information to make the trip worthwhile. This compartment is actually a bathroom. In addition to the utensils used for washing, it also stores several sets of indoor uniforms for daily activities on the shuttle and an extravehicular spacesuit for operating in the space environment. These clothes were packed in transparent cabinets. Although Kaylan could still see the nameplate on the cabinet clearly, he knew clearly that the cabinet on the rightmost side contained his clothes. In other words, they are the clothes of a fool. He took off his hibernation clothes and stood naked in front of the floor-length mirror and looked at his body. The fool's appearance in his memory was not blocked. It was a face that was almost exactly the same as Ian's. This did not faze Kaylan. What a surprise! After all, he can be regarded as the vessel of part of the fool's personality. His body was cloned from the fool's cells. The genetic similarity between the two is higher than that of twins, so it is natural that they have exactly the same appearance. Even the body shapes are similar. Well, the sizes are also the same. Kaylan turned around in front of the mirror. After making sure there was nothing unusual about him, he opened the closet with his fingerprints, took out a cabin uniform, put it on, and walked out of the bathroom. When he returned to the corridor, the indicator arrow changed accordingly, pointing straight to the end of the corridor. At the end of the corridor is the control room mentioned in the synthesized voice. Kaylan tugged on his collar and walked quickly towards the control room. Along the way, the synthesized voice kept reporting to him what had happened since his hibernation. However, Any information involving the fool or the crew would be directly erased. Go, this makes this report sound very uncomfortable. Just imagine, every sentence in a recording will be missing some key information. It is not even replaced with beep-like sensitive words, but all related audio tracks will be deleted directly. If a curious and obsessive-compulsive person were to listen, he would probably go crazy. If you're silencing like this, you might as well replace it with beep. At least I can judge how many words are missing based on the length of beep. Kaylan muttered to himself. The gates on the shuttle are all sensor gates, which will automatically open when Kaylan approaches. When the gate in the control room was raised, 3 women and 1 man turned their heads at the same time and looked at Kaylan standing outside the door. They were wearing the same cabin uniforms as Kaylan. They must have been awakened in the same batch as Kaylan. There is more than one hibernation cabin on the shuttle, and these 4 people should have woken up in other hibernation cabins. Kaylan spent some time figuring out his situation after waking up, which made him the last person to arrive in the control room among these rotations. Beep, you finally came, I responded the same as beep. What happened? The only male among the 4 smiled and greeted Kaylan. His expression was very friendly, and he wanted to come and talk to Kaylan. The relationship with the fool should be quite good. You really replaced the silencer with a beep, Kaylan complained. The customization function of this memory fragment is quite rich. His complaint did not attract the attention of the 4 people. It was just a memory fragment. The people and things in the memory fragment all developed according to the established track. Although Kaylan could participate in it, he could not have any influence on it. It will not change the course of events. Even if he blows up the shuttle, it will immediately return to its original state in the next second. He had already experimented with this in the bathroom. He smashed the floor-to-ceiling mirror with his fist, but in the blink of an eye, the floor-to-ceiling mirror returned to its original shape, and the wounds on his fist that were cut by the glass fragments disappeared. Without a trace. You look like you haven't woken up. Do you need some medicine? The man smiled again. If not, then start working, we will arrive at Alpha Star soon. You have to stand on this last duty. This is a tall black man with a shiny, hairless head, like a smooth braised egg. The body functions of people in the hibernation cabin will be in a state of almost complete stagnation, and the growth of hair and nails will also change. He had to move extremely slowly, otherwise Ian's hair would have covered his entire face after 4 years of sleep. Then let's call you Ludan. Kaylan secretly decided in his heart that since he didn't know the names of the fool and these people, he might as well give them an easy-to-remember code name. Who are you talking about? What happened to him? What accident happened? Kaylan tried to ask Ludan. It's the beep from the second group. He was originally the person on duty in the previous batch, but after being awakened from hibernation, he suffered a sudden heart failure in less than 12 hours and died without any chance of resuscitation. Hey, logically speaking, we have all undergone detailed physical examinations when we were selected. If we have hidden dangers of heart disease, we will not be able to pass the selection. There are some acquired heart diseases that cannot be detected if they don't get sick. Another female team member added, perhaps his heart has developed unknown lesions while in a hibernating state. This woman has short ear-length hair, sharp eyebrows, and delicate facial features with well-defined cheeks, giving people a handsome and neutral beauty. The only flaw is that her chest is too flat, and there is no trace of it at all. It can't be compared with the braised egg brothers' muscular and exaggerated chest muscles. Ah, yes, you are a doctor, you are right. I just wonder, if there are signs of illness, the vital signs monitoring equipment should alarm in advance. Even if the heart is in a state of hibernation, the disease, aren't the electrodes still attached? How come you couldn't detect anything at all, and the alarm didn't go off until the person fell to the ground? Said Ludan, somewhat unconvinced. The human body is a very wonderful system. Modern hospitals' exploration of the human body is still at a very superficial stage. No one can say that they have figured out all the mysteries of the human body. Sudden death is not that bizarre. If you are worried that you will be like him, I can give you a suggestion: get an artificial heart. The short-haired female doctor's words were very sharp. At least, if there is a problem with the mechanical equipment and you want to find the cause, it is better than you. The original body is much easier. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chen San. Chapter 1032. Forget it. Black-braced Dan shook his head repeatedly. The original body is more reliable. Those with prosthetic bodies and artificial organs will have to take anti-rejection drugs for life, and they are also prone to death from various causes. This kind of inexplicable mechanical failure, compared to this, I still believe in my own original parts. Cyborg-modified humans were gradually accepted by the public after the Ark landed on Alpha Planet and engaged in a bitter battle with the indigenous creatures on the planet to continue to improve their combat power. In this era, human body modification surgery is still in a gray area, and not only is the technology not very mature, the success rate of the operation is low, and it is easy to be criticized by others, especially the kind of modified people who have more than half of their bodies made up of prosthetics. In the eyes of many people, they can no longer be regarded as human beings. Basically, only people with severe disabilities or terminal illnesses would choose to undergo reconstructive surgery. A healthy person who undergoes reconstructive surgery would most likely be considered mentally ill. Kaylan walked to the console. The layout of the console of this shuttle was very retro, but Kaylan was not unfamiliar. Although this kind of vehicle produced 100 years ago has long been discontinued, it is still available on the black market. It is still common to find some rusty parts. Some illegally modified vehicles that look like they will fall apart at any time use parts that can even be traced back to the last century or even the last century. In the year 840 of the new era, this type of shuttle was still a high-precision equipment that ordinary people had no access to. But by the year 900 of the new era, this type of shuttle was as ubiquitous as taxis on the road. Especially in the 20 years from New Era 880 to New Era 900, after the United Council Group, or in other words, the undead crew behind the Council decided to land on Alpha Planet, they mobilized almost everyone who could be mobilized on the Ark. The profession of relic hunter was also born in that era. If Noah's Ark wants to land on Alpha Star, it must come up with a way to resist the gravity of Alpha Star. Otherwise, based on its own weight, I am afraid that the Ark will fall apart under the force of gravity before it stops. Coincidentally, the advance team sent in the early stage discovered anti-gravity devices in the ruins of the Alpha civilization, and there were quite a number of such devices. They were found in many different types of ruins, although with the technology of the Ark civilization, it is impossible to imitate the anti-gravity device, but the anti-gravity device left by the Alpha civilization is enough to support the entire Ark. In those 20 years, the main target of the ruin hunters was the anti-gravity devices scattered in the ruins. At that time, Ark was still in the low Earth orbit of Alpha Star, orbiting the planet. If you wanted to go from Ark to Alpha Star, you could only take this kind of shuttle, just like Kaylan and the others took the transport plane. According to non-conservative estimates, 900 years ago in the new era, at least 30,000 shuttles of this type were manufactured, and the number of round trips between the Ark and Alpha Star exceeded 1 million. After being decommissioned, some of these shuttles were dismantled and recycled, others were sold to various consortiums, and after repairs and modifications, they were given a second life as commercial vehicles, but there were also thousands of shuttles that flowed into the private sector and fell into disuse. In the hands of all kinds of people. Kaylan was once very familiar with a dealer who purchased relics of the Alpha civilization on the black market. In this dealer's warehouse, there was a rusty shuttle, but the electronic equipment on this shuttle contained rare metals. All the parts have been removed, leaving only an empty iron shell, gradually decaying under the erosion of time. This thing, how to operate it, Kaylan tried to recall the relevant knowledge in his mind. this type of shuttle was more common, but no one used it after New Era 950. Although Kaylan has seen these antiques, he has absolutely zero practical experience. Others say, if you have never eaten pork, you must have seen pigs running, but Kaylan has not only never eaten pork, but has also never seen a live pig that can run. In front of him, there are only a bunch of broken pigs. Pig skeleton. Tisk, he took a deep breath and put his fingers on the touch screen. The moment his fingertips came into contact with the touch screen, a lot of operational knowledge poured into his head in just half a minute. In seconds, he went from a newbie who didn't know where to start to a big boss who was extremely familiar with this shuttle. Now even if he dismantles this shuttle into its most fragmentary form, he can still dismantle it. Completely assembled. Kaylan took a cursory glance at the mission log left by the previous batch of rotators and was disappointed to find that there was no valuable information in it. Even if there was, I'm afraid it had been forgotten by the fool. Immediately afterwards, he focused on checking the physical examination reports of everyone in the advance team, including the unlucky guy who died suddenly due to sudden heart failure. Based on the contents of the report, he could basically confirm that everyone on the shuttle was still alive. It has not been eroded, and there are no modified people or clones. Compared with the subsequent batches of advance teams, the gold content of this first advance team is definitely the highest. Even though the probability of this advance team being able to return to the Ark alive is extremely low, its members are still the only elites in the world. The black braised egg looks like a stupid guy, but he is actually a master of mechanics. He is a super academic in the fields of biology, radio, holding 4 doctorate degrees. As for the female doctor who spoke a little harshly, in addition to being a team doctor in the advance team, she was also a geological expert and a fighting expert. In terms of close combat, the braised egg who was over 1.9 meters tall was not even this one who was only 1 meter tall. The opponent of a petite woman in her early 60s. Each member of this advance team has at least 2 or more specialized skills. This kind of compound talent, in the circle of ruin hunters, every one of them is a hot commodity, even if they like freedom. Unwilling to join those hunting groups controlled by large consortiums, will also be hired as consultants with high salaries. Talents like this, as the first advance team, are really a waste. When exploring the ruins, the first advance team actually had an alias called Death Squad, or to put it more bluntly, Death Squad. There is no other reason, simply because the mortality rate is too high. We will make a circle in the low Earth orbit of Alpha Star. After determining the landing site, we will then pass through Alpha Star's atmosphere, Ludan said while putting a 3-dimensional model on the big screen. 4 days later, everyone will be awakened, and the first Alpha planet exploration operation will officially begin. The last batch of rotations were really unlucky. A female teammate who looked like an underage girl, but was actually nearly 30 years old except for hibernation time, left. I just lay down for less than a month. If I were to pray, I would be called up to work again. If I were them, I would just stop sleeping. Then you have to be able to bear it. The team doctor glanced at her. Are the orbit calculation results out? Check it again to make sure there are no errors. If we are pulled down by the gravity of Alpha Star, we will not be able to do it. No more logging in advance. I've checked it 7 times. I guarantee there will be no problem. Little Lolita pushed up the pair of oversized black framed glasses on the bridge of her nose that were in obvious contrast with her small face. A flash of blue light flashed on the inside of the lens of her eyes. If you look carefully, you can still see densely packed characters like little bugs in the blue light. These black-rimmed glasses are not used to correct vision, but a portable AR display. Those with vision problems cannot pass the rigorous selection process of the advanced team, even those who have undergone laser correction surgery. It's not a big deal to land in advance. If you're afraid of falling into the lair of some indigenous creatures, that would be the end of it, Ludan shrugged and said. Although this advance team was the first group to land on Alpha Star, Before them, unmanned explorers, 16 wheeled exploration vehicles and 32 unmanned aircraft were sent to Alpha Star. Including the 16 underwater detectors that were dropped into the ocean, 80% of these detection equipment lost their audio, while the remaining 20% sent back a message: "There is life on this planet." This did not surprise the advance team members. Before they set off, the scholars on the Ark had unanimously concluded that there must be life on planet Alpha. This is a planet with conditions very close to those of the Earth in all aspects. In other words, this is an extremely rare planet in the universe suitable for human survival. A planet like this, as long as it is given enough time, will inevitably give birth to life. But another piece of news brought back by the probe shocked the advance team. There is not only life on Alpha Planet, but also traces of the existence of civilization. Judging from the scale of those ruins, the technological level of the civilization is far higher than that of humans. The only good news is that the civilization seems to have died, and the detector has not found any surviving individuals of the civilization. Shocked, the person on duty at the time immediately sorted out the information and sent it to the Ark, which was tens of thousands of light seconds away. But Ark's reply seemed very bland, as if the higher UPS already knew about the existence of the civilization in advance. The plan to explore planet Alpha remains unchanged, but the mission of the first advance team is still to conduct the most basic testing of the planet, such as soil quality, water quality, atmospheric composition, and other data. As for those ruins, they were not included in the first within the scope of exploration. What if there are still surviving individuals of the civilization on Alpha Planet and discover us? This was the message sent back to the Ark by the person on duty at the time. Try not to have contact with the civilization as much as possible. If the civilization attempts to take the initiative to make contact and it is unavoidable, do not show hostility, let alone conflict with the other party. This was Ark's reply. From the perspective of the members of the advance team, this was probably a sign of sincerity by Ark's senior management. After all, their technological level was much higher than Ark's. Even if the civilization was already declining, they were not enemies that Ark could contend with. Not to mention, the human civilization on the Ark itself is on the verge of extinction. But as an insider, Kaylan can read a lot of special information from this reply. Obviously, the undead crew would already know the existence of Alpha civilization by that time. Not only that, I am afraid they also already know the secret of traveling through wormholes and parallel universes. They may even know that all this is the doing of Alpha civilization. The life-saving resource asteroids after passing through the wormhole, the technical difficulties that were inexplicably broken through, these clues may not matter to ordinary people, but as an undead crew member who is in a high position and overlooks the entire Ark, this will all kinds of signs, none of them indicate one thing. There is a being who secretly helps Ark to overcome various difficulties. Of course, a large part of these difficulties are actually created by the Alpha civilization. These are the information Kaylan obtained from the Master of the Nest, the origin of Alpha civilization, the plan of the Night Watch. The Master of the Nest has already explained these things in detail. But the Hive Master knew very little about the undead crew and the Fool. These things can only be explored by Kaylan himself. The most critical event was the first contact between the Fool and Alpha civilization. In the year 859 of the New Era, the Fool was just a member of the first advance team. Although he could be regarded as an amazing genius among ordinary people, looking at the history of human civilization, he could still only be regarded as an average person. No wonder people. There have been many geniuses in human history, but geniuses who can truly accomplish great things only account for a very small part of the total number of geniuses. This action was a turning point in the Fool's fate. Although Kaylan didn't know what happened after the Fool returned to the Ark, after that, he became a member of the undead crew and became the Fool with the serial number 0. It is no exaggeration to say that this was not only a turning point in his destiny, but also a turning point in the destiny of human civilization. During this period, what happened? What kind of communication took place between the Fool and Alpha civilization, and the Night Watch, and what kind of agreement was reached between the two parties? All this is what Kaylan wants to know. Another question is why this memory was unlocked at this time. This was also planned by the Fool. Did he intend to hint to himself? Kaylan couldn't help but fell into deep thought, but his hands did not stop. As if controlled by muscle memory, he skillfully operated the console. The job assigned to him is simple, but also very important. Kaylan needs to control the 8 robotic arms equipped with laser cutting machines on the outside of the shuttle. If there are any meteorites or space debris in low Earth orbit, they will hit the shuttle. If they cannot be avoided, they must be cut with a laser cutting machine into a size that will not threaten the safety of the shuttle. The advanced team named this job Space Scavenger, and the 3-word scavenger also became the code name of the Fool in this memory. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chen-Mi-san. Chapter 1033. Scavenger, I'll leave the duty from 14 to 18 o'clock to you. Let's go have a meal and take a rest, Lu Dan said to Kaylan, and Kaylan defaulted to Scavenger as the Fool's codename. At that time, the original beep sound when others called the Fool in this memory was automatically replaced by the 3-word Scavenger. Okay, I understand, go ahead, Kaylan responded casually. There is no need for him to be distracted from the operation. As long as he subconsciously forgets the existence of his hands will act as if they have self-awareness, rapidly clicking or swiping on the touch screen, manipulating the mechanical arms to hit the objects that are coming. Cut it open with a meteorite or something else. Kaylan has now basically understood the rules in the memory world. As long as he does not actively interfere, this memory will play according to the established track like a recorded video. And if because of himself as the protagonist, if interference causes the development of things to deviate from the original memory content, it depends on how large the deviation is. If the deviation is not big and will not affect the original plot direction, then it will be compensated based on the common sense in Kaylan or the Fool's memory. For example, Kaylan suddenly said to Lu Dan, "Today is Crazy Thursday, I am 50, Lu Dan most of the time, they would smile and pat their heads, and reply, I have been eating synthetic food for more than 10 years. Just like you, I also miss the fried chicken on the Ark. Then they would act as if nothing had happened and continue to do what they should do. Thing. And if you smash the mirror directly like Kaylan did in the locker room before, then the memory world will forcibly restore the affected part of things to their original appearance. Just when Kaylan was thinking about how to obtain more information from other members of the advanced team through compliance means, a piercing alarm suddenly sounded in the control room. Warning! Warning! An asteroid with a diameter of 5.7 kilometers has been detected on the preset route and is moving in the direction of the shuttle. An impact is expected in 60 seconds. 60 seconds, Kaylan was stunned. Logically speaking, the shuttle's detection instrument should have discovered such a close asteroid a long time ago, but it appeared very suddenly, as if it came from a certain space. It rolled out of the crack and fell into the path of the shuttle. Before Kaylan could do anything, Lu Dan and others, who had just left the control room, rushed back. As soon as they entered the door, before they had time to look at the screen, they shouted directly to Kaylan, "What happened? There is an asteroid with a diameter of 5.7 kilometers on the route. It will collide with us in 1 minute," Kaylan said concisely. To be precise, it's 52 seconds later. Kaylan glanced at the countdown on the screen again and added, "An asteroid with a diameter of 5.7 kilometers, the little Lolita wearing glasses suddenly rushed to the console, made a pulling motion with her right hand in mid-air, and a virtual keyboard composed of holographic projections appeared from void, was pulled out and placed in front of her. 49 seconds, 48 seconds, it's too late to change the course, Glasses lowly said anxiously. Why is it too late? Luo Dan asked. There is still more than half a minute, and the diameter of 5.7 kilometers is not very big, right? Modifying and recalibrating the voyage requires detailed calculations using a computer. For this one on the shuttle, it will take at least 2 to 3 minutes, Glasses lowly said seriously. The computing power of computers in this era is far inferior to that of the era when Kaylan lived. Many computers used for cutting-edge equipment are not even as good as civilian-equipped machines in the civilian market 100 years from now. Can't we switch to manual operation? Lu Dan glanced at the countdown and said anxiously. The number at the beginning had jumped from 4 to 3, and the asteroid finally entered the range visible to the naked eye, and quickly magnified in their eyes. A living person cannot be choked to death by urinating. Lu Dan clicked a few times on the touch screen, and a cover under the console slowly slid open, revealing a joystick similar to a racing handle. Luo Dan reached out and held the joystick and took a deep breath, but did not perform any substantive operation. Manual operation is not as simple as imagined. First of all, the shuttle is different from fighter jets and mechas. It has neither a vector engine nor so many posture control nozzles, which results in the actual maneuverability of this thing being very poor. Secondly, the position they are currently in is actually very dangerous. Without computer assistance, if the altitude exceeds the critical value, the shuttle will be uncontrollably pulled to the ground by the gravity of Alpha Star. In this case, as long as the angle of the shuttle deviates slightly, it will easily exceed the dangerous height. However, Kaylan was not in a hurry. He did not participate in the debate and just quietly watched all this. Anyway, this was just a memory, and no matter what the ending was, it would not have any impact on him. What's more, the fool later returned to the Ark alive, which means that the advance team should have successfully resolved this crisis. The asteroid was getting closer, and there were only the last 20 seconds left in the countdown. Lu Dan bit his lower lip hard, and carefully pressed the joystick down little by little. The shuttle began to shake violently, and there was a brief commotion inside the control room. The little girl wearing glasses slipped and fell to the ground. The shuttle's avoidance direction is towards the outside of the orbit. Moving in this direction will increase the distance from Alpha Star, so you don't have to worry about being captured by Alpha Star's gravity. You just need to be careful not to crash into the outer periphery. Just a space debris ring. 10 seconds later, the shuttle had completely deviated from its original course, but the collision alarm was still not lifted. In 5 seconds, the shuttle has been pulled to the edge of the asteroid, and the nearby asteroid has occupied the entire field of view returned by the camera directly in front. 3, 2, 1. With Luodan's low roar and the joystick pressed to the limit, the shuttle finally narrowly avoided the asteroid, but just when everyone breathed a sigh of relief, the shuttle shook violently again. It got up, and there was a muffled sound from the rear cabin. Damn it! The thruster was still scratched by the asteroid. Lu Dan quickly checked the status of the shuttle. Thrusters number 1, 2, and 3 were all scrapped, and only the number 4 thruster was still alive, but if we persist for at most 30 seconds, the last thruster will also flame out. Then what should we do? The team doctor's brows knitted together. Can you fix it? It can be repaired, but it will take time, Lu Dan said solemnly. If we go out of the cabin to repair now, we will crash into the space garbage ring due to the effect of inertia, and the situation will only become worse in the future. Oops, it's very possible that we will never lose the chance to land on Alpha. Lu Dan paused and then continued, there is another option before us, which is to rely on the final power of the number 4 thruster to complete the turn and fly directly to Alpha Star. The survival chances of the two options are actually very different, Lu Dan said. I would rather choose to take a chance. It depends on how you decide. I choose Planet Alpha, the team doctor said without hesitation. The purpose of our mission is to explore Planet Alpha. Even if I die, I will die on this planet. My choice is the same as the team doctor, another female team member said. She is an ordinary-looking Chinese woman, about 25 to 30 years old. She usually talks very little and has little sense of presence. So that in the fool's memory, he didn't have much impression of this female teammate. 3 of the 5 people have already expressed their opinions, and they all made the same choice. According to the rule of the minority obeying the majority, the remaining 2 people actually have no right to choose. Lu Dan is right, let's take a gamble. Kaylan nodded. He knew that no matter what he chose, he could not change the direction of the plot. He was just an outsider, a bystander from the protagonist's first perspective. But then again, if the person standing here was not the fool but Kaylan would probably make the same choice as Lu Dan and the others. Theoretically speaking, the chance of survival is higher if you choose to go to Alpha Planet. The glasses lowly nodded. The reverse thruster at the front of the shuttle is not damaged, and we still have a chance of landing successfully. And if we plunge headfirst into as for the garbage ring, there are more celestial bodies in that place that are larger than the asteroid just now, and it will take at least 2 days to repair the thruster. We must ensure that we will not hit those objects within 2 days. Thing. Speaking of which, since there is a reverse thruster at the front of the shuttle, why can't it be turned around and use the front thruster to replace the damaged tail thruster? Kaylan asked unexpectedly. The expressions of lowly eyes, the team doctor and the passerby with a low sense of presence all fell into a brief sluggish expression. This was not because Ian's question shocked them, but because this sentence did not exist in their original memory. Exists, thus triggering the self-correction mechanism of memory. It's useless, replied Ian. Stewed eggs. The reverse thruster at the front of the shuttle is used for deceleration and buffering when landing. It is not connected to the same power furnace as the main thruster at the rear, both in terms of power and duration. Sex is incomparable to the main propulsion and cannot replace it. When he said this, Lu Dan's eyes were in a state of glazed over, and all the movements in his hands stopped. Not only him, but everyone else was also frozen in place, motionless. Even the jumping numbers on the screen were frozen. It's like Kaylan released Shisu. The only difference is that the stagnant world has not faded away and turned into black and white. This stagnation disappeared in an instant, and everything around them returned to normal. The people in the advance team continued to talk about the topic just now, as if Kaylan had never asked the question. I'll control the shuttle, and you can figure out the landing trajectory, Lu Dan said to the glasses lowly. It doesn't have to be too precise, just make sure that the place where we land is an open plain, and don't fall into the sea. It's best not to fall in the mountainous area. This shouldn't be difficult for you, right? I'll try my best, the glasses lowly nodded, and her hands began to type quickly on the virtual keyboard. Through preliminary surveys by drones, the advance team already knew that the ocean on planet Alpha was very dangerous. Not only was the seawater toxic, corrosive, and containing strong radiation, there were also many strange things about the ocean itself. From a safety perspective, if you think about it, the ocean is definitely a no-go zone within a no-go zone. Secondly, there are the ruins of the Alpha civilization and the endless mountainous areas. Needless to say about the former, if the latter falls in, it may not be that easy to get out of the mountains. Planet Alpha is full of radiation zones and chaotic electromagnetic fields. Props such as compasses are of no use, and drones will be seriously interfered with. The complex terrain of the mountainous area is enough to trap everyone in the advance team to death. But the good news is that the empty plains on Alpha Planet account for more than 50% of the entire planet. Even if they randomly choose the landing point, they have more than half the chance of landing on the plains. Glasses lowly quickly completed the calculations and input a series of data into the console. Lu Dan continued to make adjustments based on these data, reversing the shuttle's course bit by bit. Finally, as the icon symbolizing propulsor number 4 on the screen jumped from yellow to red, and finally slowly extinguished, the shuttle completely lost power. Fortunately, the course adjustment has been completed. Next, the shuttle will slide towards Alpha Star under the influence of inertia, and then continue to accelerate under the pull of gravity. The process of crossing the atmosphere was uneventful. The shuttle itself was designed to land on Alpha Star, and its defensive performance was excellent. Only 2 of the 6 layers of ablative coatings were consumed before it successfully broke through the atmosphere and arrived above a plane on Alpha Planet. Height 11,000 meters, Ludan said solemnly, reverse thrusters, number 1, number 2, number 3, and number 4, all start and start decelerating. The front end of the shuttle that fell straight down suddenly ejected 4 tail flames that were tens of meters long. Driven by this strong force, the shuttle's falling momentum suddenly slowed down. Parachute, open. Along with the braised egg's low drink, a huge parachute was pulled out from the tail of the shuttle. The moment it opened, the parachute was caught by the airflow, and the shuttle's fall slowed down again. There is a plane below, and no suspicious objects have been found visually. Llewellyn stared at the screen and said, "The cushioning air cushion is ready, and it is expected to land in 135 seconds. P.S. Thank you to the useful soap and reading giraffe for the 1,500 starting coins. Thank you to the book friend 20210829073644336 for the 500 starting coins. Alien Relic Hunter author, and Chen-Mi-san. Chapter 1034. They did not wake up the advance team members who were still in hibernation. A few of them were enough to operate the shuttle, and waking up the others would not help the situation. It's better to just let them lie in the hibernation cabin like this. If the shuttle unfortunately crashes, with the protection of the hibernation cabin, maybe these people's chance of survival will be higher than Kaylan and the others. In addition, there is another point that everyone has tacitly acknowledged but not made clear: if we are really in a desperate situation, instead of watching death coming and being helpless, it is better to go to sleep in an unconscious state. From a certain perspective, this can be regarded as a kind of mercy. Anyway, if Llewellyn and his group were lying in the hibernation cabin, after making sure that they would not be able to have any impact on the situation if they woke up, they would definitely hope that the person on duty would not wake them up. Even if you are one of the elite selected from a million, even if you have prepared to die in the universe or an alien planet before setting off, it would be a lie to say that you don't have a trace of fear when facing death. 135 seconds is neither short nor long. Several people, including Kaylan, put on protective clothing and respiratory masks in just 2 minutes. The composition of the air on the surface of Alpha Star is very close to that of the Earth. In theory, it can be breathed by humans, but there are still toxic gases that are harmful to the human body in some areas. No one knows whether the landing point of the shuttle will win the lottery. If the shell is damaged, it may be too late to wear protective equipment by then. The last 15 seconds, Lodan and several other team members looked at each other. I hope we are not so unlucky. A series of explosions sounded, and dozens of circular metal cover plates flew out from the outer shell of the shuttle. The orange-yellow buffer airbag squeezed out of the hole originally blocked by the cover plate, expanded rapidly, and soon the entire shuttle is wrapped inside. Kaylan and the others used safety belts to secure their bodies to the bulkhead, and then tightly grasped the pull tabs on both sides. Bang! This big balloon composed of dozens of buffer airbags stacked together hit the surface of Alpha Star heavily, and then bounced high up by the huge reaction force. The shuttle bounced on the ground more than a dozen times before it was able to neutralize this terrifying force. At this time, it was already nearly 10,000 meters away from the original landing site. In the last distance of landing, the fuel of the reverse thruster was completely exhausted, so in the end the shuttle almost hit the surface of Alpha Star with the momentum of free fall. In this case, the shuttle did not disintegrate, so it could only. It shows that the quality of the first batch of this model of shuttle is really good. Later, after the large-scale exploration of Alpha Star and the mass production of shuttles of this type began, the quality began to plummet. There were even cases where the shuttle burned and exploded when crossing the atmosphere, turning into a planet in just a few seconds. Fireball incident. The control room was dark, all the screens had been turned off, and only a few emergency lights with their own power sources were left, still emitting a dim red light. "Are they all still alive?" The first person to speak was the team doctor. In the darkness, Kaylan vaguely heard a rustling sound, which seemed to be caused by the friction between the seat belt and the fabric of the protective suit. "I'm alive, but it's a bit uncomfortable to be shaken. I'm in a mess, fortunately. Luckily we didn't have time to eat just now, otherwise, my vomit would probably be all in the helmet now," Ludan continued. "Words. That's really disgusting," Loli with glasses said. According to the fool's impression of her, this is a guy with mild obsessive-compulsive disorder and mild misophobia. If she is allowed to have such close contact with such a pile of filth, then it was simply worse than killing her. Nausea is the next best thing. The most troublesome thing is that the vomit pours back and blocks the respiratory tract, which is fatal. Moreover, in the situation just now, there is no way to take off the helmet to clean it. In short, we are pretty lucky," the team doctor concluded. "Where are the other two, scavenger, passenger? Are you all still alive?" Ludan shouted into the darkness. "I'm alive, but my head is a little dizzy," Kaylan responded. Although he knew that this was the fool's memory world and that no matter what happened, it would not cause real harm to him, he could really feel the strong dizziness. Moreover, the worst thing is that his physical tolerance has become the same as that of the fool at that time. As the saying goes, it is easy to go from frugality to luxury, but it is difficult to go from luxury to frugality after getting used to a monster-like powerful body. It will be really difficult to adapt to a frail normal human body for a while. Kaylan even wondered for a time whether this memory would be forcibly ended if he was knocked unconscious like this. Still, alive, this was the voice of the insignificant passerby. After she finished speaking, she immediately made a sound of retching, followed by a violent cough. "Very good. Everyone survived. No one was injured, right? If everything is still okay, I'm going to open the hatch," Dan asked. "Each batch of rotation members has a squad leader. K, the team leader of Lan, and his group of people on duty is this big black and bright stewed egg. However, becoming a squad leader does not mean that you have the absolute right to speak. When there are differences of opinion within the team, each rotating squad still adopts a voting method to decide the final choice, but the vote of the squad leader, the weight is equivalent to 3 votes from other people. There are 5 people in a group of rotations. When the other 4 people oppose the squad leader's choice, the squad leader must also listen to the opinions of the team members. You can even select a new squad leader through voting." "Don't worry yet," the team doctor said. She had already unbuckled her seat belt and stepped on the ceiling of the control room with her feet. The shuttle was now lying on the wilderness in an upside-down position. Kaylan and the others were all equivalent to their heads. Hanging upside down on the wall, to be honest, the feeling of blood flowing from the whole body to the brain is not pleasant. The other 4 people all unbuckled their seat belts. Only Ian's seat belt buckle malfunctioned and there was no response at all when pressing the unlock button. Just when Kaylan felt that his brain was starting to be confused and the buzzing in his ears was gradually starting to sound, the team doctor walked up to him. She took out what seemed to be a thin wire from her body, inserted it into the seat belt buckle and stirred it a few times. She only heard a crisp click sound, and Kaylan, who had lost his shackles, pressed his head down against the wall. It slid down and hit the upside-down ceiling with a thud. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chen San. Chapter 1035. Fortunately, I was wearing a helmet and neck protector. Kaylan touched his head. With his current physical strength, if he was hit like this, even if there was no concussion, his cervical spine would probably suffer some pain. In this memory world, fatal injuries are not terrible. Instead, injuries that make Kaylan truly feel the pain that the fool has endured but cannot die are more destructive. Compared with the physical pain, the mental torture is even higher. "You're not hurt, "Are you?" Lu Dan also walked over and pulled Kaylan up. "No." Then with the faint light of the emergency light above his head, Kaylan glanced at the thin wire in the team doctor's hand and muttered, "I didn't expect you to have such ability. Just some little tricks for making a living, not worth mentioning." The team doctor put away the wire, turned around and walked to the screen, trying to restart the shuttle's control system. However, she tried several times, but the machine never had any problem. Reaction: "I tried it, but it didn't work. There was probably a problem with the power supply system when landing. Now the only place with power in the entire shuttle is probably the hibernation cabin. All independent power supply equipment is used there, and it is also equipped with I need an emergency battery," said Lu Dan. "The landing of the shuttle has been detected, and everyone else should have been awakened as well." Glasses lowly added, "Let's go out after everyone has gathered." Not long after, a group of advanced team members also wearing protective clothing walked into the control room. There were a total of 25 people who set off from the Ark on this shuttle. During the 19-year journey, 8 people died due to illness. Deaths occurred due to various reasons such as operating accidents. Counting Kaylan and the other 5, there were still 17 surviving advanced team members. Through a brief exchange, these people who had just woken up quickly understood the situation. After the attempt to repair the shuttle failed, everyone immediately made a decision, divided the personnel into 2 groups. One group explored the surrounding conditions of the landing site, and collected data along the way. Some usable resources. The other group of people stayed in place, dismantled the shuttle, gathered all valuable materials, and built a temporary camp on the spot. Although this is the first time humans have set foot on Alpha Star, drones have already collected enough information before that. The temperature difference between day and night on Alpha Star is huge. If the camp cannot be set up in time, the temperature in the wilderness at night will be as low as low temperatures of tens of degrees below zero are absolutely fatal to humans. The protective clothing worn by the team members can indeed regulate temperature and isolate radiation and other toxic and harmful substances, but the problem is that the protective clothing consumes power. Once the power supply is exhausted, the protective clothing is completely a burden. There is no power. With an exoskeleton, it is simply impossible to rely on the wearer's own strength to move this piece of clothing weighing hundreds of kilograms. Before setting off, the experts on the Ark decided on 3 energy supplement plans, one based on solar power generation, one based on geothermal power generation, and the last one based on kinetic energy power generation. But under the current situation, the first 2 plans are basically useless. The entire Alpha Star is covered by thick radiation clouds, and the sunlight that can reach the ground through the clouds is very thin. The solar power generation efficiency is probably only 10 to 20% of the expected value. Unable to meet the daily needs of the advanced team. As for geothermal power generation, unless the landing site is in a volcanic crater or some place with frequent geological activities, otherwise, if they want to use geothermal energy, the advanced team must first drill a geothermal well on the ground that does not know how deep it needs to be. However, in areas such as volcanic craters or other areas that can obtain shallow geothermal heat, their own safety cannot be guaranteed and are not a suitable location for camping. The most reliable, but also the most unstable, is the third solution, kinetic energy generation. There are many types of kinetic energy power generation. One is relying on wind power and hydraulic power, and the other is relying on human power. There is no river near the landing site, and there is no available hydraulic power. The human energy conversion ratio is too low, and we don't consider it. The only thing left is wind power generation. Fortunately, in the open wilderness area, the temperature difference between day and night is large, and hot and cold air flows frequently, so the feasibility of wind power generation is still very high. We carry 6 sets of kinetic energy generators, but the folding windmills are too large, so we only have 2 sets. Llewellyn, a mechanic, said to everyone, "But the outer shell of the shuttle can be made into a simple windmill, and the laser. We also have equipment such as cutting machines, and the processing will not be too difficult. The electricity provided by the 6 windmills should be enough for the daily consumption of the camp. But the biggest problem is food. A man with a square face said, "In 19 years, there is not much food left on the shuttle. Now that everyone is awake, the remaining food can only last for 2 months at most. Moreover, this does not take into account that exploratory behavior will greatly increase the body's demand for calories. According to pessimistic estimates, the remaining food may only be enough for 1 month." This Chinese character face is the captain of another rotating team. The original commander of the advance team passed away due to a hidden disease in the 6th year after embarking on the journey. According to the advice from ARC, the remaining 4 rotating team captains were formed. A command team was formed to jointly manage this advance team. We are all on Alpha Planet. Of course, our food problem must be solved by this planet. There is an old saying in China, isn't it called eat the mountain if you rely on the mountain, and eat the water if you rely on the water? If this planet can't even support 17 of us, if we can't feed them, how can we meet ARC's colonial needs? Lu Den continued. You put it lightly. The speaker was a blonde white woman with the same short hair as the man. She was also one of the 4 rotating team captains. In a month, even if the land here is suitable for farming, it's too late to harvest enough crops. Then we have only one way to get food, hunting like primitive people. But I think you all know about the indigenous creatures on this planet. They are far more powerful than the beasts on the earth. Dangerous and more aggressive. Moreover, once hunting leads to revenge from indigenous creatures, how long do you think our temporary camp can hold on under the siege of the herd? Perhaps we can look for some indigenous crops from planet Alpha to use as food rations. Braised Egg curled his lips. You were wrong about one thing. In addition to hunting, the way primitive people obtained food was also gathering. If I remember correctly, the location where we landed is in the desert area marked as Area B-17, right? In this area, in my impression, the drone has not found any edible crops at all. The blonde hair the woman frowned and said, moreover, the terrain here is flat and there is no danger. You can find camps built on flat ground very far away. My suggestion is to use this month to find a place that is rich in resources, easy to defend and difficult to defend. Camp where you attack, not where you are. Camping on the spot is the plan we decided just now. In our current state, we are simply unable to make a long journey. Quasilian shook his head and said, moreover, we are still not sure whether there are any survivors of the Alpha civilization left in this planet. On the planet, if we mistakenly enter their territory, have you ever thought about what would happen? P.S. Thanks to He1EM for the 500 starting coins. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Alien Relic Hunter author, and Chen-Mi-san. Chapter 1036. The minority obeys the majority. Set up camp on the spot first, and then determine the next action plan based on the actual situation. The man who spoke was called Jonah, the last of the 4 rotating team captains, and the only one with a name in the fool's memory. A person, unfortunately, except for his name. The fool forgot all the memories related to Jonah, and even Jonah's character and specialties were all erased. The only thing left for Kaylan is this name. No. Not all erased. Kaylan was startled. He suddenly discovered a loophole in the world of memory. Although he could not remember anything related to Jonah, if the fool really erased everything related to Jonah except his name, then in this world of memory, Jonah's sense of existence will be even thinner than that of that passerby girl. You may even only remember the existence of such a person in the advance team. You can't even see what this person looks like or what he says. I can't even hear clearly. Now that Jonah is standing there completely, with no mosaic on his face, and Kaylan can hear what he says, this means that the fool has not really forgotten this person, but only transferred the information related to Jonah, hidden in a deeper place. Among all the people, he is the only one with a name, but for this person with a name, All other relevant information is blank. This is very intriguing. Kaylan couldn't help but wonder, could this be a reminder specially left for him by the fool? Could this Jonah be the key clue in this memory? Kaylan immediately decided to make this Jonah a key observation object, and if possible, try to choose to act with this person. Only Jonah can hold down that blonde girl. Ludan folded his arms and whispered to Kaylan and the others with his head tilted, looking like he was watching a good show. Why do you say that? Just ask if you don't understand. Since the fool didn't leave any information about Jonah in his memory, it's better to just ask the other people in his memory. Anyway, if you don't ask, it's useless. Even if it affects the original memory process, it will also be automatically corrected, so Kaylan doesn't have to worry about triggering a butterfly effect that will change the course of the incident. Except for the late commander, Jonah is the most prestigious in the advance team. Apparently decisions are made through voting, but in fact as long as Jonah takes a stand, most people will agree with him. Dan whispered to Kaylan. It seems that he guessed it right, Kaylan thought silently. The fool did not forget all the information related to Jonah, he just hid the information. To be honest, I kind of forgot who this Jonah is. Kaylan asked tentatively, but this time, Ludan didn't respond at all, as if he didn't hear his question at all. Maybe the necessary triggering conditions have not been met, so this part of the information cannot be unlocked, Kaylan muttered in his heart. In the end, the blonde woman's suggestion was not adopted, and the advance team unanimously decided to act according to the plan set at the beginning. The weapons box located in the cargo bay of the shuttle was opened, and each advance team member was assigned the corresponding weapon according to their position. These weapons have been sealed in the box for 19 years, and fortunately they are in pretty good condition. Basically still usable. Unlike the large caliber firearms that were replaced after Ark landed on Alpha Planet, these weapons are basically models handed down from the old era. During the interstellar drifting, although there were small-scale conflicts within Ark, they never turned into a war. People also knew very well that using powerful weapons on the Ark was tantamount to self-destruction. It is precisely for this reason that individual light weapons such as firearms have basically not developed much in the past 900 years. Even the newly built production lines are still made from thousands of years ago. In an era when resources are extremely tight, as long as the most basic needs can be met, people will not invest excess manpower and material resources in unnecessary projects. Kaylan glanced at a pile of 5.56, 7.62, and 5.8 mm caliber weapons in the box, and couldn't help but sigh in his heart. People in this period have not suffered from weapon calibers. When the Ark landed on Alpha Planet, humans began to interact with the indigenous people. Only after a large-scale conflict between creatures occurs, they will discover that the weapons handed down from the old era are not powerful against the vast majority of indigenous creatures on Alpha Planet. A rifle that can easily penetrate body armor is not even a scratch in front of those tough skin and chitinous carapace. In the 9th year of the new era, the proposal to upgrade the muzzle of universal firearms was passed. At that time, the prototype gun sent to the Joint Parliamentary Group was the Zero rifle. After several improvements, or various cast rations to save costs, it was finally finalized. It is the famous ARC-01 automatic rifle. After that, the soldiers of the Field Corps, no, there was no such thing as a Field Corps at that time, it should be called troops that perform combat missions outside the Ark, finally had a weapon in their hands that could deal with most indigenous creatures. An individual weapon capable of causing fatal damage. As for this box, the only ones that can meet the requirements of this type of weapon are a few general-purpose machine guns using 7.62 mm full-power bullets and an M14 Eber precision marksman rifle that also uses this type of bullets. Before the big screen of the shuttle went out, Kaylan had already looked at the map. The place where they landed was a desert area named Area B-17. If Kaylan remembers correctly, the official name of this place later was called Zia Desert. It was the 4th largest desert in terms of area on planet Alpha, almost equivalent to the Taklamakan Desert on Earth, of course, planet Alpha, or in other words, the Taklamakan Desert on the Earth in this time and space has long since disappeared in the geological changes that lasted tens of thousands of years. The original four oceans have also merged into the Central Sea and the Polar Sea, and the continents have been connected together again to form the vast Pangaea. Actually, plate movements are measured in units of hundreds of millions of years. Tens of thousands of years are not enough time to produce vast changes. Planet Alpha became what it is now mainly because of the transformation of the planet by Alpha civilization. Geological changes also include man-made interference factor. The most common creature in the Zia Desert is an armadillo-like creature, but it is much larger than the armadillos on Earth. Adult individuals are generally more than 10 meters long. Alien armadillos are also very aggressive and territorial. If someone intrudes into their territory, they will secretly drill holes and sneak directly under the enemy, and then break through the ground to launch a surprise attack. This creature was named the alien armadillo by the biologists on the Ark. The most threatening parts of them are their sharp claws and scales that contain a large amount of metal elements and are as hard as armor. It is difficult for the weapons held by the advanced team to penetrate this layer of scale armor and cause effective damage to the alien armadillo, but the sharp claws of the alien armadillo can easily tear through the protective clothing equipped by the advanced team. K-Lan did not personally participate in Ark's campaign to eliminate alien armadillos, but some related combat cases were recorded. Before the Type 01 rifle was incorporated into the Army, heavy machine guns or artillery were generally used to deal with alien armadillos, bombs, and other powerful weapons. If the firearms in the hands of ordinary soldiers want to hurt them, the only way is to get under the belly of the exotic armadillo and fire at their belly that is not protected by scales. However, the success rate of doing so is extremely low. In order to protect the weakness of the abdomen, the alien armadillo crawls close to the ground. Even if someone can really squeeze under the alien armadillo's belly and beat it to death, he will still die. The carcass of an exotic armadillo was crushed to death. An adult alien armadillo with a body length of 10 meters weighs several times that of an Asian elephant, not to mention the heavy metal scales. The situation is not optimistic for the advance team. After the weapons were distributed, perhaps because the fool's marksmanship was better, the only M14 Eber precision marksman rifle in the box was given to K-Lan. The other one was also given to him, and its damage to indigenous creatures was basically negligible. 9mm Glock pistol. Being able to obtain a precision marksman rifle naturally means that K-Lan and his group are classified into the action group. The garrison team stayed behind to set up camp, while the operation team was responsible for exploring the surrounding area, collecting information and available resources. In addition, they also had one more task: hunting. Jonah asked them to capture at least one indigenous creature from Alpha Planet and hand it over to the team's biologists for dissection. Understanding the characteristics of this creature was secondary, and the most important thing was to figure out whether it could be eaten. The action team is composed of 2 fully staffed rotations, no more, no less, exactly 10 people. The leaders are Lu Dan and the Chinese character Face. Each of them carries a 7.62mm caliber general-purpose machine gun, including K-Lan. In the M14 Eber, there are only 3 weapons in the action group that can penetrate the scale armor of the alien armadillo. We have walked almost 3 kilometers. Luoden looked back at the shuttle in the distance. The surrounding situation is clearly visible. Prey, resources, nothing can be seen. In my opinion, I want to gain something. I'm afraid I'll have to go there. Luoden pointed to the hilly area in the distance, which was the boundary of the Zia Desert. It seemed not far away, but it was actually dozens of kilometers away from their current location. The Chinese character Face also sighed and said, "I just had people analyze the ingredients of those shrubs. They are all highly poisonous and cannot be eaten. The only living creatures that could be seen in the desert, apart from themselves, were some low bushes covered with thorns. These bushes were all gray-brown and looked like they were dead. An advance team member squatted down, cut off a small branch, and put it into the reagent bottle. The reagent in the bottle immediately turned into color. Although Kaylan didn't know what that color meant, he knew it was dangerous at first sight. The colorful and bright colors were like knocking over an art student's palette. Kaylan really wanted to tell them that there were actually many indigenous creatures living in this desert. According to ARC's statistics, between 900 and 905 of the New Era, there were at least more than 100,000 exotic armadillos living in the West Cliff Desert. It's just that this kind of cave-dwelling creature basically lives in underground caves during the day, and only comes out of the ground to look for food at night. The previously dispatched drones were all shooting at high altitudes, and the signals were intermittent. It is completely normal that they failed to capture any signs of the alien armadillo's activities. What's more, alien armadillos also have another characteristic. They know how to bury the holes they dug and erase the traces of their movements on the ground. Because of this, the members of the advance team never imagined that underneath this desert, there is an intricate network of caves. It's probably useless to say it, Kaylan thought to himself. There's no need to consider whether they will believe what I say. As long as it involves information that should not be known, they will probably turn a deaf ear. After all, I am just a bystander and cannot change this period of history. The action team walked almost 6 kilometers in one breath before encountering the first attack. An exotic armadillo suddenly emerged from the ground, and two members of the advance team who were caught off guard fell directly into the cave entrance. He didn't even have time to let out a scream. Another person was torn in half by the alien armadillo's claws. Warm blood rain fell from the air, staining the white protective clothing of the people around them red. What? Llewellyn immediately took a dozen steps back, raised his machine gun and fired at the exotic armadillo. The team doctor went around to the side and used the submachine gun in his hand to attack at close range. The moment the exotic armadillo emerged from the ground, there was a rare opportunity to attack its weak point on the abdomen. But just when Kaylan raised his gun to aim, he felt a strange dizziness in his head, and his finger on the trigger it also seemed to be petrified and could not be suppressed no matter what. After the dizziness disappeared and the fingers returned to normal, the exotic armadillo emerged from the cave and lay down. Ian's delayed shot finally hit the scales on its back. Although Kaylan knew that this was because in his original memory, the fool failed to hit the alien armadillo's weakness, which caused the abnormality just now, he still couldn't help but cursed. This feeling of powerlessness is really uncomfortable. The two machine guns of Kwazalian and Ludan are at an angle of 45 degrees, suppressing the alien armadillo from two directions with firepower. The 7.62mm full-power bullet can indeed cause fatal damage to the alien armadillo, but it is not one or two shots can be fatal. They can only penetrate the scales of the alien armadillo. As for this behemoth to fall, they still need to accumulate enough damage. In game terms, the weapon's attack power reaches the boss's armor-breaking line, but the boss's long health bar still needs to be worn down little by little. P.S. Before finishing, I plan to use this memory fragment to narrate some of the plot when the Ark just landed on Alpha Planet. I don't know if you are interested in this part of the content. If you're interested, I'll write it in more detail. If you're not interested, I'll explain everything that needs to be done about the main plot and then get back to the main story and resolve it quickly. As for other stories, they can be written in extra chapters in the future. What do you think? Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chen-Mi-san. Chapter 1037. Keep a distance from it. Back up. Back up. Call for support, Kwazalian shouted, and at the same time he threw the empty bullet chain box towards the exotic armadillo and took out a new one from his backpack. Superior. Kwazalian used to be a soldier. Although the actual combat effectiveness of Ark's soldiers during the interstellar drifting period was about the same as that of security guards, he could still be regarded as one of the most familiar with firearms among this group of people. Ludan was still hurriedly unloading bullet belts. After stuffing it into the ammunition supply port, the second round of firing on the Chinese character face on the other side had already begun. The alien armadillo turned around, used its tail to slap away an advanced team member who came around behind it, and then curled up. In the curled up state, due to the reduction of the body surface area, the scales on the body of the alien armadillo will be stacked layer by layer, and the defense will be improved to a higher level. The more critical point is that this curled up posture is actually the alien armadillo. The starting position of the ultimate move. Kaylan subconsciously wanted to shout loudly to ask the surrounding advanced team members to disperse, but he found that his throat seemed to be mute and he could not make any sound, and those advanced team members who were retreating saw the alien armadillos. After shrinking into a ball, he actually came closer again and used the firearm in his hand to shoot the alien armadillo at close range. The next second, the curled-up alien armadillo rolled violently. The bespectacled Lolita and the insignificant passerby were unable to dodge, and were immediately crushed into a pulp by this big iron ball. They were proficient in close combat. The team doctor's reaction was slightly faster than the two. The moment the alien armadillo started to move, he jumped back violently. However, his body was still rubbed by the high-speed rolling alien armadillo, and his whole body suddenly felt like a kite with its string broken. It was thrown far away. Only 2 minutes had passed since the alien armadillo attack. The 10-person action team had already lost 7 people, with only Kaylan, Ludan, and Kwazalian still alive. Oh, from the vital sign detection device, the guy who had just been whipped away by the alien armadillo with its tail still had 1 breath left, but in his condition, if he couldn't get timely treatment, he might not survive for more than 10 minutes. Kaylan glanced at the communication device on his wrist. The team status interface in the upper right corner of the screen showed that the team doctor's heart rate had returned to 0, even the doctor was killed. Even if the remaining 3 of them successfully killed the alien armadillo, there would be no people can perform emergency surgery on him. What the hell kind of monster is this? Why have drones never photographed it? The universal machine gun in Kwazalian's hand had exploded due to overheating. He simply threw away the weapon and the heavy ammunition bag and ran wildly. While shooting at the exotic armadillo with his pistol, he cursed loudly. This thing probably stays underground most of the time. It's normal that the drone didn't capture it. The alien armadillo rolled towards the direction of the Chinese character face. The pressure on Ludan and Kaylan was relatively light, but they were not. It doesn't mean that they are safe. After Kwazalian is crushed to death by the alien armadillo, at the speed of the alien armadillo rolling, it is easy to catch up with the 2 people without vehicles. Just when the 3 of them were desperate, a strange-looking aircraft suddenly broke into the airspace. A slender metal spike shot out from the launcher at the bottom of the aircraft, accurately hitting the alien armadillo, and a burst of bright white light shot out. An electric arc suddenly flashed across the alien armadillo's body. The next second, the alien armadillo released its curled-up state and lay on the ground, its body twitching. Is it the paralysis effect of high-voltage current? Kaylan judged from the arc that just flashed, and then he looked up at the alien aircraft in the sky. Is it a remnant of the Alpha civilization? However, before the 3 members of the advanced team could react, the aircraft seemed to have suddenly lost power, fell straight from the sky, hit the ground hard, and exploded. A deformed metal fragment flew over with a roar, and was nailed to the ground 1 meter in front of Kaylan. If it flew any further, Kaylan, no, it should be the body of the fool, I'm afraid it would. It was split in 2. Crashed. Kaylan looked at the pile of smoking wreckage in the distance, and a big question mark popped up in his head. Obviously, the pilot of this aircraft is most likely an Alpha, and he is also likely to be a member of the Night Watch organization, but why did he crash on his own after rescuing Kaylan and the other 3? Is it because of mechanical failure or other reasons? Ludan and Kwazalian looked at each other, and the 2 quickly made a unanimous decision to check the crashed aircraft. Although the driver's chance of survival was almost 0, this was the first time on Alpha Planet anyway. Go up and discover another intelligent and civilized individual. Moreover, the other party just saved the three of them. Does this mean that the civilization on this planet does not regard humans as enemies? Of course Kaylan knew in his heart that the Alpha civilization had never regarded the humans on the Ark as enemies from the beginning. It could even be said that they were the ones who led humans to this time and space and to the Alpha planet. But all these braised eggs and national characters' face didn't know, and Kaylan couldn't tell them the truth. The two walked to the burning wreckage of the aircraft. Llewellyn took out an emergency fire extinguisher from his backpack. After extinguishing the flames, he started rummaging through the wreckage. The Chinese character face stood a little while holding a gun and looking wary. A little further away. As for Ian's mission, he was to keep an eye on this exotic armadillo that had lost the ability to move due to paralysis. Weird, so humming weird. About 10 minutes later, Llewellyn, his head covered with gray and his face covered with gray, emerged from the wreckage and shook his head at the Chinese character face and Kaylan. It's so weird. No body was found in this aircraft. No body. Xian was stunned for a moment. I didn't see anything popping out of the aircraft just now. This should rule out the possibility of parachuting. By the way, did you see the scavenger? No. Kaylan also shook his head. Could it be a drone? Xian asked again. It's not a drone. I found a complete cockpit inside, and even a very advanced linear seat. Judging from the size of that seat, Alpha Man should be a creature with a body shape that is quite close to ours. Braised Egg said. Could it be that the body has been burned? After all, we have never seen what this kind of creature looks like. If it is a fragile creature like a jellyfish, maybe it will evaporate as long as the temperature in the cockpit is slightly higher. What? Said the Chinese character face. No. The cockpit is very well protected. After I pried open the door, I was even amazed by the safety performance of this aircraft. Even if the aircraft body disintegrated in the air, the operator in the cockpit maintained a very high level of survival. The technological level of Alpha civilization is far higher than ours. That's really bloody. The two thick eyebrows on the Chinese character face were tangled together. Could this be an aircraft that can be controlled by both humans and unmanned pilots? By the way, since the cockpit is well protected, can you find any clues from its control system? Stop talking. Lu Dan shook his head and said, I can't understand those words at all. I guess even if the linguistic experts in the team read them, it would take a lot of effort to decipher them. Well, first take pictures of all the data and send it back to the shuttle. Guozilian did not ask the shuttle to send these data back to the Ark. After the shuttle passed through the atmosphere of Alpha Star, the contact between them and the Ark was broken. The thick radiation cloud is like an ionization barrier, isolating the entire planet from the outside world. Even if the data can be transmitted back to the Ark, those linguistic experts will not be able to decipher the Alpha civilization's writing, Kaylan said in his heart. At this moment, he really wanted to get into the cockpit of the aircraft and take a look, although the fool at that time he still doesn't understand the language of Alpha civilization, but Kaylan can understand it. But the fool's feet seemed to be nailed to the ground, motionless. Kaylan could only sigh in his heart. It seemed that the fool had not entered the cockpit at that time. Even if Kaylan forcibly broke free from the shackles of memory and rushed entering the cockpit, you probably won't be able to see anything. This is a world composed of the fool's memory. Anything that the fool has not seen does not exist. It is a world of subjective idealism. Send it back. They said they would send someone over immediately, Luo Dan said, then turned his head and glanced at the alien armadillo that was still in a paralyzed state with some worry. I just don't know how long this monster will be controlled. Perhaps we should find a way to deal with it first. At this moment, Kaylan suddenly felt that the sky and the ground were shaking violently. The braised eggs and Chinese character faces in his field of vision, the wreckage of the aircraft, and the exotic armadillo not far away began to distort and deform. The surrounding environment began to distort. The tone gradually began to distort. The next second, he suddenly found himself back in the real world, and the hound was shaking his shoulders vigorously. "What's the matter, old dog?" Kaylan asked, rubbing his groggy eyes. "I also want to ask you what's wrong. Didn't you insist that you won't be sleeping? Why are you still falling asleep on the sofa?" Hound shouted. "I originally planned to let you rest more, but now, not only you, but everyone can't sleep. Is there something going on over there at the Ark?" Kaylan was startled and sat upright. Although the hound hadn't told him the reason for waking him up yet, Kaylan had already vaguely guessed something. "There is a situation, a big situation." Hound raised his hand and pointed at the wall behind Kaylan. "See for yourself." Kaylan turned his head and saw a huge, pale, tree on the projection screen. "What's this?" "Grown from the Ark, just 5 minutes ago," General Maginot added with two thick dark circles under his eyes. Only then did Kaylan notice that the base of this giant tree turned out to be the Noah's Ark they had been monitoring. If the size of the Ark was used as a reference, then the size of this giant tree was almost a very exaggerated. At this size, even Alexander, the secret army god, and even the Leviathan can only hold a candle to it. "Did this really grow in 5 minutes?" Kaylan confirmed to the hound. "If you don't believe it, you can retrace the video." Hound threw the projector's remote control to Kaylan and said angrily. Kaylan pressed the button to rewind the video to 5 minutes ago. The Ark seemed extremely silent under the cover of night. The towers and high-rise buildings that were once brightly lit have now become dark. Only with the high-brightness searchlight on the drone, you can still vaguely see those covering the surface of the Ark. Fleshy carpet, and those egg-shaped sarcomas that breed on the carpet. Kaylan didn't wait long before a change happened. The egg-shaped sarcomas suddenly shrank, and even the monsters hatching inside melted into pus and dissolved into the inside of the fleshy fungus blanket. Then, the fleshy fungus blanket, the blood color quickly faded and turned into a pale color, as if a corpse had been soaked in formalin solution for several days. All of this happened so quickly that the video had to be slowed down to 0.25 times in order to fully see these changes. The entire fleshy fungus carpet turned pale in just 1 minute, as if the life force in it had been completely drained. At 1 minute and 10 seconds, the towers and high-rise buildings in the center of the Ark suddenly it began to shake, collapse, and sink into the interior of the Ark. In the center of the Ark, the dome suddenly began to crack, and a pale sapling with a diameter of more than 2 kilometers arched out from the bottom and began to grow at an alarming rate. "You should be more familiar with this location than we are." Hound pointed to the location where the pale saplings grew and said to Kaylan. "Core area." The growth rate of the saplings can only be described as terrifying. It is difficult to imagine how the huge body is made of matter. If this is really a tree, even if all the organic matter on the Ark is considered, the nutrients it needs to grow are probably just a drop in the ocean. "This thing has completely violated the law of conservation of matter, right?" Maginot murmured. Although he had seen the scene more than once, when he saw it again, the shock in his heart was still difficult to express in words. "I suggest you forget all the laws and regulations put forward by scientists on Earth." Hound glanced at Maginot and said, "Especially anything that can be related to that existence. The people of the immortal crew, what do they want to do?" Maginot took a deep breath. "I can't understand their behavior more and more. I don't know what they are doing now, but if they have all been eroded, I can be sure of one thing." Kaylan put his chin in his hands and said word by word, "Their ultimate goal is to the entire human civilization is sacrificed to that existence." Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chen San. Chapter 1038. "Don't these people have their own goals?" Maginot frowned. "Like the prophet of the heresy, isn't his purpose just to become a god? I don't believe they would give that existence so willingly, work hard and have no selfish desires at all. You can understand that his subconscious cognition has been rewritten by that existence, just like eating and reproduction. Dedicating everything to that existence will also become the instinct of these eroded people," Kaylan said. To be honest, without personal experience, it's hard for me to imagine what it feels like. Levi, standing aside, whispered, "Then what is the function of this giant tree? It is some kind of dedication. A sacrificial ritual or a weapon used against us. I don't know, but I always feel familiar." Kaylan couldn't help but recall the trial he had received under the bottomless sinkhole. In the second stage of the trial, Ian's task was to control the blasphemer Mecha to blow up the giant alien plant crown of ashes on an asteroid called Ashes. According to the mission description, the crown of ashes can directly draw energy from the core of the asteroid, and can also interfere with the magnetic field and gravity of the asteroid to control the movement trajectory of the asteroid. In order to collide with this asteroid and swallow other celestial bodies, it will provide more nutrients for the crown of ashes. Although the giant tree on the screen was very different from the crown of ashes in shape and color, Ian's subconscious kept telling him that this giant tree and the crown of ashes were the same thing. Since the mission of the Crown of Ashes can be recorded in the trial program, it means that the Alpha civilization should have resolved the crisis of the Ashes asteroid hitting Alpha. Then, the genetic sequence of the Crown of Ashes also has a lot to do with the probability is stored in the ruins of a certain Alpha civilization. That the undead crew would be able to obtain the genes of the Crown of Ashes and cultivate similar plants, it makes perfect sense logically. I understand. Ian's expression froze slightly. The undead crew will want to sacrifice not only the entire human civilization, but the entire Alpha Star, and even the entire galaxy where Alpha Star is located. What? This time, not only General Maginot was stunned, but even the Hound, who was accustomed to these things, couldn't help but exclaimed. The entire galaxy, let's not talk about this. Just Alpha Star, or the Earth in this time and space. How do they plan to sacrifice such a big planet? Just rely on this tree, the Hound said incoherently. Asked. You have to ask the people in the Undead Crew Association. Kaylan shook his head. Since this plan can be implemented, it means that the entire Undead Crew Association should have been eroded. Even if there are resistors, they should all have been killed. The meaning of Ian's words could not be more obvious. The Survivor Alliance can only rely on its own strength now, and there is no need to expect any internal response from ARC. But no matter what the function of this tree is, it should be the key to the Undead Crew's plan. As long as we can destroy this tree, we should be able to destroy their plan, Levi said. Everyone knows that this tree is the key, and what you said is pure nonsense. Hound rolled his eyes at Levi and continued. The guys from the Undead Crew still dare to release this giant tree in front of us. That means they have enough confidence that we can't destroy it. You can try long-range attacks, Levi said. I have a plan. Although it has not been carefully calculated, I think this plan has certain feasibility. Tell me about it. Kaylan nodded to him. I have watched the previous video of the Skatey's fire reconnaissance of the Ark many times. I can basically confirm that the original anti-aircraft weapons of the Ark, except for the protective cover, have basically been scrapped. In this way, the Ark is completely it has lost the ability to intercept long-range ballistic missiles. And now the fleshy carpet has all shrunk, and the last obstacle has disappeared, Levi said. It happens that Mukake Fortress has 3 long-range ballistic missile launch bases, and another 40 tactical nuclear warheads with an equivalent of 10,000 tons of TNT and 2 strategic nuclear warheads with an equivalent of 14 million tons. As long as the security program in the locking device is cracked using hacking technology, the Ark can be set as the target of the missile. The long-range ballistic missile configured in Mukake Fortress is the Apocalypse 3, with a cruising speed of Mach 28, which is 28 times the speed of sound. At this speed, even if the air defense system on the Ark is still alive, it cannot respond at all. It can really to intercept the ballistics. You have to rely on the seemingly weak but actually extremely strong super energy shield. In the first stage of the combat operation, I had thought about using long-range ballistic missiles to carry out a nuclear strike on the Ark, but at that time, 2 factors were taken into consideration, so I did not propose it. Levi continued. First, it was there may be survivors on the Ark, and a nuclear strike does not distinguish between friend and foe. It may even fail to kill the enemy leader, but kills a large number of survivors accidentally. Secondly, with the existence of energy shields, it is difficult for a nuclear strike to cause a fatal blow to the Ark. Especially the core area where protection measures are the most stringent. The core area is the physical location of the members of the undead crew. In addition to the outermost super shield, the core area also has at least 4 to 5 layers of energy shields and up to a dozen layers of physical defense, which can directly withstand strategic nuclear weapons. A blow. But now, Levi changed the topic. The height of the suddenly appeared giant tree has exceeded 20,000 meters, and the energy shield of the Ark cannot protect it. We don't even need to attack the Ark below. For the main body, just set this giant tree as the missile target. This method seems to really work. Maginot made a fist with his right hand and slammed it into the palm of his left hand, and said with some excitement, activating the missile launcher requires certification from the undead crew. Although the undead crew will be us enemy, but Kaylan is still here. The network connection between Muka Fortress and the Ark has long been disconnected, so the database of the missile launcher has not been updated. Even if the undead crew will erase all Kayan's authority now, this order cannot be issued at all. Go to the missile launcher at Muka Fortress. No. I think it's better to keep the nuclear warheads. They can be used for very critical purposes, but not now. Kaylan shook his head and rejected the proposal. If you don't need it now, then when? Maginot was stunned for a moment, and a Chinese proverb came out of his mouth: the tree is in the growth stage now. When it is fully grown, I'm afraid we won't be able to ruin its chance. I'm afraid it's useless to attack the tree trunks and crowns, Kaylan said slowly. Do you still remember the ruins of the bottomless sinkhole? Remember? Maginot and the Hound nodded together. At that time, according to the order of the Undead Crew Association, Maginot, as Kayan's liaison, actually assumed the role of a monitor. After Kaylan returned from the undersea city, Maginot did not dare to take a series of actions after returning from the undersea city. It was said that he knew everything, but at least he knew a few things. It was not until after the trip to the sick village that Maginot was transferred to Mukake Base, ending this mission. As for the Hound, he is simply the relic hunter who came out of the bottomless sinkhole with Kaylan. He is also the life and death friend who can depend on Kayan's life. He knows everything about what happened under the sinkhole. Clearly. You mean, that trial mission? The Hound quickly recalled it and whispered, do you think this giant tree and the crown of ashes are the same thing? That's right, Kaylan nodded. What trial mission? What crown of ashes? Maginot looked at the Hound blankly, and then at Kaylan. Why can't I understand what you are talking about? Kaylan kept the story short and recounted his experience in the bottomless sinkhole to Maginot and Levi, and the two immediately fell into a brief silence. How about it? Now you know how tricky this thing is, said the Hound. The annihilation bomb made of antimatter, although I don't know the specific yield, judging from the description, it is probably much more powerful than our strategic nuclear warhead. Levi murmured to himself, but just even such a large-scale murder weapon must venture deep into the ground and be set at the roots of the crown of ashes to destroy it. No wonder you say that attacking the crown and trunk will have no effect. Kaylan did not tell them about the existence of experimental subject No. 1197. He only said that due to unexpected changes inside the ruins, the trial process was suspended. Even he did not know what the root system of the crown of ashes looked like. Whether detonating the annihilation bomb can kill it? What a pity, Kaylan said in his heart. He regretted two things. The first thing was naturally that the trial process was suspended and he was unable to obtain more information. The second thing is that experimental subject No. 1197. Kaylan once thought it was an existence similar to the prehistoric species, but now it seems that experiment number 1197 probably came from a family that believed in different gods and was hostile to the Alpha civilization that believed in that existence at that time. Relation. But with its strength, it is not difficult to annihilate the entire Alpha civilization by itself. This family may have broken away from the cannon fodder level described by the Hive Master. The reason why the Alpha civilization was able to capture it was most likely because it missed it on the edge of the conflict area between the two clan civilizations. Experimental subject number 1197 did not show much hostility towards Kalan, perhaps because Kalan was not branded as that being at the time. In religious terms, this was classified as no belief, no belief. Sectarians. People who believe in religion generally regard heretics as enemies, but for people who believe in nothing, they will maintain a subtle neutral attitude. Perhaps this is why experimental subject number 1197 did not go smoothly after escaping from trouble. The reason for destroying the Ark. People without faith are often regarded as potential development targets by believers, and the current Ark civilization is still too weak for experimental subject number 1197 and is not worthy of development at all. Just like that being who kept the Alpha civilization in captivity and allowed it to grow on its own, perhaps after the Ark civilization reaches a certain level of strength, experiment number 1197 will appear again and pull the Ark civilization into the camp of that alien god. For a civilization that is not threatening at the moment and may be an ally in the future, experimental subject number 1197 maintains the lowest level of goodwill. It not only chatted with Kalan for 5 cents, but also relieved Alpha in the bottomless sinkhole. The safety facilities left by others allowed Kalan and his companions to escape in the elevator. From Ian's point of view, experimental subject number 1197 is not an enemy, at least not for the time being. But for the undead crew that has been eroded, the situation is different. The enemy of my enemy is my ally. If experimental subject number 1197 is still on Alpha Planet or in the nearby space, the crew members who find the undead will completely surrender to that existence, and maybe they will come back directly to destroy the Ark. Drop it? From its position, it was impossible to watch the undead crew sacrifice the entire civilization and the entire planet together and turn it into the power of that existence. What a pity, Kalan sighed crazily in his heart. It would be great if this guy didn't get out of trouble at that time. Go and release it now, and all problems will be solved. Just when Kalan was depressed about missing a good opportunity to gain powerful combat power, Levi thought of a new idea. By the way, the blasphemer mecha controlled by Miss Valentina is equipped with annihilation bombs. Such a weapon. No, Valentina, who was leaning against the door, replied immediately. The annihilation bomb was specially prepared for the mission of blowing up the Crown of Ashes. It should not be considered the standing weapon of the blasphemer mecha. Kalan replied, this kind of thing is too dangerous. If you are not careful, you can kill it. The entire Mukok base was destroyed in one fell swoop. Are there any existing annihilation bombs on planet Alpha? Are there any stocks in the unexplored ruins? Perhaps we can copy the operation of the Alpha civilization to blow up the Crown of Ashes. I'm afraid I have to ask the Master of the Nest. It's just that place. If I go back now, I might not be able to make it in time. Kalan sighed. In addition to the annihilation bomb, I also have many things I want to do about the Crown of Ashes. I asked him. I had already forgotten about the Crown of Ashes at that time, but I didn't expect that the undead crew would be able to do something like this now, and it's too late to regret it. The space where the Master of the Nest city is located is easy to get out and difficult to enter. If Kalan hadn't been lucky enough to crash into that special time node for the first time, he might have had to stay in there for a long time before he could find the Master of the Nest city. Wool. And in those space-time fragments where the flow rate of time is synchronized with the outside world, how much time he spends, how much time the outside world will pass, by that time, I am afraid that the giant trees growing on the ark have already bloomed and bear fruit. P.S. Another hole has been filled, to be precise, 1.5. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chen-Mi-san. Chapter 1039. 8 hours ago, inside the Ark, East 9th District. While those in black were fighting with the giant beast that suddenly emerged from the ground, no, to be precise, it was the giant beast unilaterally killing the man in black, Bianca leaned against the cyborg. The remaining energy in Yi's body quickly escaped from the ruins, crossed the boundary line between East 9th District and East 8th District in one breath, and dived into the bustling commercial street of East 8th District. She didn't know why those giant beasts attacked the men in black. Logically speaking, shouldn't these giant beasts and the men in black be in the same camp? Could it be that these giant beasts are not intelligent and difficult to control? They do not specifically attack the men in black, but attack all living creatures they see indiscriminately? I was able to survive solely because of luck and running fast. After much thought, Bianca felt that this was probably the most reasonable explanation. Although East 8th District and East 9th District are only separated by a border line with a width of no more than 20 meters, their prosperity levels are very different. Before anything happened to the Arasaka Consortium, the East 8th District was much stronger than the East 9th District in terms of population, economy, and public security. Of course, the poor public security in the East 8th District was most likely due to the Arasaka Consortium's support of various street gangs. After the destruction and reconstruction of the East 9th District, the two became even more incomparable. Except for the famous Kabukiko Ichiban Street in the East 9th District, this commercial street in the East 8th District is not as prosperous as any other place. Both sides of the street are densely packed with shops. Above are colorful signs and various holographic projection advertisements full of cyberpunk atmosphere. On the street and at the end of the street are two large shopping malls covering an area of tens of thousands of square meters. The interior of the mall is like a maze. People who come here for the first time often get lost even if they follow the navigation. Further back, there is a large area of office buildings in the business district. Buildings hundreds of meters high are directly connected to the domes, and suspended train tracks shuttle between the gaps in the buildings. This commercial street can have more than 30,000 visitors during holidays, but now, it is as quiet as a ghost town. Are there no survivors? Bianca was limping along on the first floor of the street. The energy indicator of the cybernetic body flashed dim red. This was a sign of energy exhaustion. If Bianca could not find the energy in time, if crystallization or other charging methods were used, the cyborg prosthetic body that was now supporting her from falling into the street would soon turn into a heavy burden. We need to replenish energy, as well as food and medicine, Bianca thought in her mind. One thing about the commercial street in East 8th District is better than that in East 9th District, and that is that the temperature control system is still working. Although the temperature is a little unstable due to the influence of East 9th District, at least it won't look like that ruins at night. Enough to freeze people to death. Bianca's eyes searched the street, and soon she locked on a luxury car parked on the side of the road. This kind of luxury car is different from ordinary cars that charge or use synthetic chemical fuel. In order to reflect its high end, it has a built-in small energy converter, which uses energy crystals as the energy source. In all likelihood, it is in the trunk of the car. There will be a safe for storing crystals. Bianca inserted a crowbar she picked up into the gap in the trunk lid and pried it hard. An alarm suddenly sounded. She couldn't help but cursed, raised her head and shot the horn of the luxury car. Bianca's consciousness was already on the verge of dissociation. The moment she saw the luxury car, she completely forgot about the existence of the alarm. This piercing alarm sounded particularly harsh in this quiet commercial street. She quickly retreated into an empty self-service convenience store nearby and squatted behind the glass to observe. She waited for a full 20 minutes and did not see any living creatures attracted by the sound of the alarm. It seems that the men in black didn't continue to chase after them. Were they destroyed by the giant beast? Bianca turned her head and glanced at the bread on the product counter, although it seemed from the packaging that the bread had already passed the time shelf life, but there is no obvious deterioration. Bianca, who was extremely hungry, couldn't help but swallow. After confirming that there was no alarm at the counter, she smashed the glass with a crowbar, took out the bread, tore open the package and started to bite into it. After eating 4 expired breads in one go, plus a whole jar of salad dressing and a Russian sausage as thick as an arm, Bianca's hunger was completely gone. She plundered some small, high-calorie items from the counter. It was tall and easy to carry preserved food. After filling the backpack, I walked out of the convenience store. After looking around and confirming that no one was there, he continued to pry the trunk of the luxury car without saying a word. The beautiful metallic paint of the luxury car was cracked and peeled off in large areas under the dual force of the crowbar and the cybernetic body. For a luxury car of this level, the price of touch UPS and repairs is much more valuable than the energy crystal in the trunk. However, for Bianca now, no matter how much money she has, also useless. The Ark has been destroyed, human civilization has been destroyed. Although this commercial street now vaguely retains the shadow of its former prosperity, it is actually a barbaric world. Without civilization, the existence of currency has no meaning, and luxuries that are not practical are not even comparable to a coarse-grained steamed bun. Bianca had not considered driving the car away, but she gave up the idea after she discovered that it was not bulletproof at all. 1/3 of the value of this car is on the car sticker, and 1/3 is on the car sticker. In terms of appearance, as for the materials and workmanship, it was not even as good as the off-road vehicle they drove out of Muka Fortress. Before the cyborg prosthetic body was about to shut down due to low energy, Bianca finally pried open the trunk, and then used violent means to open the safe. There were not many energy crystals in the cabinet, and the quality was average, but that's enough for her cyborg. Bianca picked up a piece of crystal and replaced the crystal in the prosthetic body that had become completely transparent and looked almost like glass. The constantly flashing red indicator light finally turned back to green. Bianca roughly calculated the energy in the remaining crystals, which can almost maintain the mobility of the cyborg prosthetic body for 3 days. It would be a bit reluctant to walk from the Ark to Muka Fortress in 3 days, but if there is a vehicle, that's a different matter. Vehicles, that will definitely not work. There is no way to cross that clear zone. As for the aircraft, let alone the aircraft, they will probably become a living target as soon as they leave the port. Bianca has already tasted the accuracy of that kind of crossbow. For once, she didn't want to taste it a second time. But that doesn't mean it's completely impossible to escape. As long as the speed is fast enough, the spikes fired by the ballista can't catch up. Whether it is an airplane or an airship, it takes time to accelerate. It is impossible to reach the fastest speed just after taking off, and this acceleration process is enough to be pierced into a hedgehog by a ballista. You need to be fast enough when leaving the port. An idea flashed in Bianca's head, and she suddenly thought of something that could reach a very fast speed when it was first launched. When it drilled out of the launch channel, it could already reach a speed of Mach 7 or even Mach 8. And can accelerate to Mach 15 in 2 seconds. The air defense weapons installed at each military port on the top floor of the Ark, the Bovali air defense system. The main body of the Bovary air defense system consists of a radar, a launch tower and a launch device. Its biggest feature is that the launch silo of the air defense missile runs through the entire Ark, extending from the bottom of the Ark to the top of the Ark, which gives the missile enough acceleration time. By the time the missile leaves the launch silo and appears outside the Ark and is detected by the enemy, its speed has made it difficult to intercept. If you can find a usable Bovary air defense system, hollow out the warhead of a missile, put on power armor and parachute and get in, and set the target and warhead disintegration time, then you can definitely use it. The missile launches itself out, breaks away from the missile at a safe location far enough away from the Ark, and returns to the ground by landing. But the Bovary air defense system requires very high authority to activate. Bianca was stunned for a moment. She touched the pocket on the inside of her chest as if she remembered something, and took out a piece of paper in a waterproof bag. Of black cards coming. It was this black card that led to the annihilation of her team, but Bianca also knew that this black card symbolized a very high level of power. It was no exaggeration to say that with this card, it was equivalent to General Maginot being present in person. The permissions of the black card should be enough to activate the Bovary air defense system, but the black card also has a drawback, that is, when it is inserted into any device, it will be noticed by the person called Zeus. If Bianca didn't move fast enough, the men in black might come to the door before the missile was launched. The black card must be used in the final stage of the launch. Before that, including entering the military port and launch tower, as well as the place where the anti-aircraft missiles are stored, Bianca must rely on herself. The difficulty of this plan is very low, and the success rate is almost negligible, but it is the only way Bianca can escape from the Ark at the moment. Military port, the closest military port from here should be. Bianca opened the electronic map, searched carefully, and found that the nearest military port was No. C-25 military port located directly above the East 7th District. No. C-25 military port is a Class C military port. It can only berth small warships such as supply ships and high-speed support ships. There are only 4 pitiful berths, but no matter how small it is still a military port, and it is still a military port located on the uppermost structure of the Ark, so it must be equipped with the Bovary air defense system. The Bovary air defense system is not only to ensure the safety of this military port. When hundreds of air defense systems operate at the same time, an airtight air defense firepower network can be weaved over the Ark. Therefore, the size of the military port is not important. The location is the key to whether the military port will be equipped with the Bovary air defense system. The biggest problem before Bianca was how to reach the military port safely. First, she must traverse the entire East 8th District, and then take the elevator or vertical rail train in the East 7th District to the top of the Ark. If both are out of service, she can only choose the maintenance channel and climb the ladder. Climb up to the top structure located 1,400 meters above East 7th District. There should be power armor and parachute in the warehouse of the military port. There is no need to look for it, but the air defense system of C-25 military port can still be activated, which makes Bianca feel a little uneasy. It just depends on luck. Bianca thought silently in her heart. She did not rush to the East 7th District, but first searched for supplies on this commercial street, food in convenience stores and supermarkets, medicines and bandages in pharmacies, and firearms and ammunition in weapons stores, all of which were from Bien. Card target. The only pity is that things like military stimulants or quick-acting hemostatic agents are hard to find in ordinary pharmacies. The same goes for weapons stores. Most of the weapons you can buy in commercial street weapons stores meet civilian standards. Semi-automatic weapons and gun calibers are also restricted. Explosives such as grenades and explosives are impossible to buy here, let alone the crystal energy bomb that Bianca wants to get most at this time. Even relic hunters and mercenaries with licenses and purchase qualifications must go to specialized places to buy such weapons. Weapons stores like this one in bustling business districts basically serve civilians. Competitive needs and collection needs are far greater than actual combat needs, just like a joke circulating in the mercenary circle, who is a serious person who would go to a big mall to buy a gun. Perhaps we should go to a military camp or a place with an underground black market first, Bianca thought. I just don't know if there are any surviving troops on the Ark. But in fact, even if Bianca met a survivor, she would not dare to contact them easily, No one knew whether the survivor she encountered was a survivor. As she walked, she observed the shops on both sides of the street. A few days ago, these shops should have been crowded with people, but now there was not even a living thing to be seen. Pedestrians on the street, people in the shopping mall, the staff and shoppers, the white-collar workers in the office buildings far away. This business district usually has a resident population of at least tens of thousands. Could it be that they all disappeared in an instant? Perhaps the upper levels of ARC issued an evacuation notice and everyone evacuated this place? No. No, if there is really an evacuation notice, then even if there is an army to maintain order, there should be a scene of chaos. Bianca can even imagine all kinds of vehicles blocking the streets, and people pushing each other one after another. The crowd was crowded, and the garrison soldiers holding riot shields and rubber batons tried hard to keep the evacuation passage from being opened by the flow of people. Stampedes and traffic accidents are bound to happen. Even if the crowd can be evacuated successfully in the end, the streets will definitely be a mess. But the commercial street in front of me didn't look like it had experienced a major evacuation at all. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chenmi-san. Chapter 1040. Just when Bianca was debating whether to investigate further or leave here and implement her escape plan, the ground suddenly shook violently again. Those giant beasts? Are they coming out of the ground again? Bianca quickly looked around, then selected a low but sturdy-looking building and ducked in. Those giant beasts will attack any living thing they see, even the men in black. If they continue to stay in the middle of the street, they will definitely be targeted by the giant beasts that emerge. Bianca found a hidden corner and squatted down. This location was the safest in the whole building. Even if the building was collapsed, broken beams and load-bearing columns would be created in Bianca's hiding place. By creating a safety triangle, Bianca would not only not be crushed to death, but the ruined house would also be able to hide her figure. She just needs to wait until the giant beast leaves, then use the power of the cyborg body to push away the ruins and climb out of the ruins. Behemoth, why are there behemoths under the ark? Bianca leaned against the wall, full of doubts in her heart. It is said to be underground of the ark, but in fact it is still in the middle of the ark's interior. That is the structural foundation of the ark. Now these residential areas and industrial areas are all built on this structural layer. This structural layer is equivalent to the foundation laid when building a house. Rather than saying that the behemoth emerged from the ground, it would be more appropriate to say that it emerged from the foundation. Although that place is inaccessible, it is closely related to the lives of the residents on the ark. A block's energy, power supply, gas supply, and various infrastructures used to maintain the environment are all located in this structural layer. If the structural layer is if there are really giant beasts living there, it is impossible for the lives of the residents not to be affected in any way. However, Bianca seems to have never heard of similar stories, etc. Bianca was stunned, and she suddenly remembered some urban legends. Since we mentioned stories, legends are naturally also a type of story. She remembered that she had heard some bragging mercenaries bragging after a meal. Some people mentioned that there was an extremely weird moving maze within the structural layer of the ark. No one who enters this maze can come out alive, and they all become food for the monsters living in the maze. And because the underground labyrinth is very close to the main reactor of the ark, and there are no protection measures as good as the residential area, the monsters in those labyrinths have undergone great changes under the radiation day after day. In terms of danger, the underground labyrinth even more terrifying than those high-level Alpha civilization ruins. Bianca always thought that this was just a boring and weird story made up by writers on the internet who had nothing to do. But now it seems that there is no certainty about the underground labyrinth, but within the structural layer, there seems to be a large number of people who have been exposed to radiation. Mutated giant monster. Are these monsters also bred by the leaders of the men in black? No, that's not right. They have gained control of the ark. What they need to do now is to consolidate the defense of the ark and resist attacks from Muka and other fortresses. The attack requires the use of these giant beasts, and they should be thrown onto the battlefield instead of being released inside the Ark. Allowing these behemoths to wreak havoc inside the Ark will only have the opposite effect. No, it's still wrong. Maybe these giant beasts were not released by the Men in Black organization, but simply because they broke through the containment facilities or devices and came to the ground on their own. According to this explanation, those Men in Black, this can explain why he was so helpless when he first saw the giant beast. Bianca was still making wild guesses, but the vibrations outside became more and more intense, but they were just vibrations, the roar of giant beasts, the movement of people emerging from the ground, etc. Bianca didn't hear it at all. Strangeness. Bianca thought again and again and decided to go to the window to observe the situation. The earthquake continued, but no giant beasts appeared in this neighborhood. There were only cracked lines on the ground one after another, and some signboards that were not firmly fixed fell to the ground. Other than that, no visions occurred. Simple, earthquake. Bianca boldly returned to the street and looked around. She already felt that her brain was overloaded, she was already very tired, and now all kinds of things that could not be explained by logic were presented to her one after another. Suddenly, she was even a little too lazy to think. If possible, she really wanted to ignore everything and find a soft big bed to have a good sleep. But she also knew very well that now was definitely not the time to sleep. Bianca lay down, pressed her body close to the ground, and felt the vibration. The source of the vibration was due west. To the west of East 8th District was East 7th District, then 6th District, 5 District, 4 District. The serial numbers gradually moved up, and the bustling procedures and land prices also skyrocketed. And in the center, there was a restricted area for ordinary Ark residents. Core area. Is this vibration coming from the direction of the core area? Bianca murmured in her mind. Is there some big guy coming out from under the core area? However, even if it is a supergiant beast, the shock generated when it breaks out of the ground theoretically should not last for so long, unless what appears in the core area is a large group of giant beasts. Not only did Bianca not feel nervous, she actually felt a little gloating. That big shot who could only be contacted with a black card was most likely staying in that mysterious core area. Now that something happened in the core area, for her, it was absolutely, this is great news. We have to quickly find a way to leave the Ark, and then send this news back to Muka. These giant beasts may be used by us. During the counterattack, this is definitely a force enough to reverse the situation, Bianca thought to herself. Road. Ark, tectonic layer, underground labyrinth. The four of Joker, Soap, Noir, and Urich were leaning against a rusty metal pipe. The former kept marking on the electronic map, while the latter three were breathing heavily. In the past few hours, they have released at least 20 mutated giant beasts into the residential area above. These 20 mutated giant beasts are not ordinary monsters, they are all the kind that occupy one area. Even if the boss level monster is not as strong as that giant moth, it is not much weaker. Releasing these monsters is not an easy job. If you are not careful, you can easily lose your life. However, the main reason why Soap and Noir are willing to participate in this crazy plan is because of the powerful clown. Unfathomable humanoid monsters exist. It is not difficult for Urich to find the location of those mutant behemoths and find the exit to the ground. In the past few years of living in the underground maze, he unexpectedly acquired a very special ability. Although he could not remember the various changing passages and blocks, he could not draw an accurate map for Soap and the others. Come. But as long as he follows his feelings, he can always reach where he wants to go and never get lost. Moreover, for those monsters with strong territorial awareness and strong desire to attack, he can also sense their presence from a long distance. This ability should have been used for self-protection, but now it is used to actively find those monsters. Monsters also appear to be extremely useful. As long as there is a place that Urich is very reluctant to go to, then there is a high probability that there is a mutated monster that qualifies there. In the clown's original words, under the dual effects of radiation and survival instinct, Ulrich has evolved an ability that is difficult to explain with existing biological theories. This ability is like a migratory bird that never loses its way when migrating long distances. As long as it is in this maze, Ulrich will have its own navigation software, and it is also the kind that can easily navigate dangerous areas. Navigation software highlighted. The most dangerous part of this plan is naturally to lead the mutated giant beasts away from their territory and all the way to the exit of the maze. This step has always been completed by the clown alone. Fortunately for those grumpy and simple-minded monsters, you only need to sweep a shuttle towards their butts, and they will chase them. Wait until the clown lures them to the ground, and then use his unpredictable movement skills. Disappearing from their sight, those monsters that have lost their targets will naturally vent their anger on the surrounding buildings. As for those more cunning monsters, even if they chase them, they will stop very vigilantly when the clown leaves their territory. No matter how provocative the clown is, they will not cross the boundary even half a step. Out of helplessness, the clown could only use his trump card. He used his tentacles to inject a special substance into the monsters' bodies. After receiving the injection, even the calmest monsters would look like, when it came to the red mad cow, it completely lost its mind and rushed towards the clown regardless of the situation. And these monsters, after being lured to the ground by the clown, caused more serious damage than other monsters. In just a few minutes, several blocks were turned into rubble. It has to be said that if a camera is added at a distance, the captured footage can be released as a monster-type special film with almost no editing. After all, those destroyed buildings are all made of reinforced concrete. The real thing is definitely not comparable to those models made of paper and plastic. The cost of just one office building that was overturned by a giant wild boar was estimated to be over 200 million credits. There is simply no special shooting director who would dare to spend so much money on props. Moreover, even if there is such money for the director to squander, the director will not be able to hire such a real character monster actor. Seeing the buildings collapsing one after another, Soap's heart kept cheering and roaring. When those monsters slapped the roof of the mansion worth thousands of dollars, he even felt better than before the sage's time. The sprint phase is even more exciting, with a sense of adrenaline rushing straight to the sky. Probably, there is a twisted desire for destruction in human hearts, but usually this desire is suppressed by reason. Noir looked at the excited Soap and shook his head. Although these monsters caused huge damage to the residential area, they did not cause much trouble to the real enemy. Although the scope of the underground maze was large, but most of them are located at the lower end of the serial number, and they cannot bring the monsters directly to the core area. The only way is for the clown to continue to lead the monsters all the way to the core area. But after the Soap proposed the idea, the Joker rejected it. The Joker said that if Zeus and others were made aware of his existence, they would not care about the raging behemoths at all, but would be treated as the highest priority targets to be eliminated by the Joker and his group. I don't know if the clown can escape safely, but Soap and others are definitely dead anyway. Then let's put all the monsters in the underground maze first. After hearing what the clown said, Soap immediately chose to follow his heart. With so many monsters, there will always be some that move towards the core area. Ulrich, are there any stronger monsters around here? Soap glanced at the corpse like Ulrich Nowitzki. We have almost rested, it's time to continue working. There should be nothing around here, only a few corners that would make me feel uneasy. It should be, not a powerful guy. Ulrich closed his eyes, as if he was sensing something. After dealing with each other for such a period of time, Soap already has a rough idea of Ulrich's adjective. If Ulrich said a place I don't want to go near even if I die, it would basically be a boss level. The monster's destructive power is almost the same as that of the giant moth. The next level is very scary, or it makes me tremble just thinking about it, and the third level is a place that needs to be avoided as much as possible. As for the monsters that can make him feel uneasy, They are at best the common beasts in the wilderness, deadly to ordinary people, but not a threat at all to well-trained and well-equipped soldiers. It looks like we have put all the powerful monsters in this area up there, let's move to another place then. Soap clapped his hands and was about to turn around, but suddenly he stumbled and fell face down. Street. Ouch, what the hell? Tripped? Nothing. The ground, why is the ground shaking? Soap climbed up on his hands and knees. He was surprised to find that the space they were in was constantly shaking, as if a monster weighing dozens of tons was dancing above them. Is it a monster? Noir raised his head and looked directly above. No, the clown objected.